I'm Susanne Bartel from Hamburg, and you already met my dear husband yesterday in David's keynote, Andreas. Greetings. So the two of us together, we're floated Hamburg, and we're focusing on Kanban coaching and training, mostly in the northern German area, but also doing stuff abroad, particularly like training things. So today I'm glad that I can share the story of one of the KMM beta engagements with you. So we had the pleasure to work with one of our long-term clients, and we could try out the KMM there to learn like how does it work for me as a coach, but also for the organization. And you'll hear the story with a start, a middle, and an end, and we'll see in which order we do this. And after the story, I'll briefly reflect on how did the KMM serve, or what functions did it have, and how did it help. And happy to take on any questions if we have the time at the end. Okay. So and also generally, if you have any questions anytime, just raise your hand and we'll address it. Okay. Good. So to get started, let's picture this. So we have a large German company in a rather traditional industry. So it's none of these fancy e-commerce shops, it's a solid organization. They're operating globally. So they have branches across the globe. And they have this newly built software system with like a dozen business verticals. And of course, it's built on the latest technology stack. So it's pretty cool stuff. And what this system does, it's implementing business processes that are really tightly integrated, and also they help different parties to collaborate along these deeply integrated processes. So it's quite a complicated product from the depths of the system. And to spice it up a bit, maybe a few details about the organization, organizationally. So there are 8 software development teams operating in 3 countries. That kind of just happened, can imagine, it doesn't make things easier, but at least it's all in the same time zone. It's all Central Europe and also culturally relatively close to each other. And one of these teams is actually a UX team, so they're not, there are also some cross dependencies there. And usually building features requires more than one team. Okay, so they build features, and the teams are rather tightly coupled to these business verticals. Which means if you want to get a feature out that spans parts of the process, you usually need to work with more than one team. Okay, so to manage this, they have this multi-tier Kanban system in place in order to coordinate the teams and also for the product owners to work with. Okay. So the rest, in the project, they really collaborate nicely. So IT and product folks, it's really cool. The rest of the organization is still very siloed. So, there is talk of DIT. You're giggling, have you heard this before? Or no? Okay. And the business, it's like, when things get tight, it sounds like, oh, DIT didn't deliver. Like, who's DIT? It's a huge organization, and these are just like 70 people. So, these kind of things. The good news is the IT leadership, they're really Kanban-minded and quite well educated, so they show up at like Lean Kanban Central Europe conferences and so on. And maybe it also has to do with it. I'm there for years now, kind of doing the inception thing with them. Okay, so from what you've seen, what do you think? Is this the beginning of the story or the end? Just shout it out, beginning, end, middle. Huh?
Hopefully beginning.
Okay, hopefully beginning. Any other opinions? Okay, yeah, you caught me there. Yeah, it's actually the start of this whole thing. But I thought it's interesting to start this way because I think it's important to say that they have accomplished a lot. They started in 2016. They said, okay, we need to rebuild the system. And they started from scratch, and they had one Scrum team. This was this Keimzelle, so the nucleus. And from there until 2018, it was the end of 2018, where this story begins. They had ramped up this whole project, or it's now more like a product organization, with all these teams in a different location, and it's running rather smoothly now. So at this point, so this was a already major achievement. You can imagine, I explained the organization they're operating in, and it wasn't easy. Okay, cool. At this time, you see the little dots there already. At this time, they were on a plateau, and I talked to one of the managers last week, and he said, yeah, we were on a plateau at that time, We were pretty comfortable now. We were so glad all these teams ramped up. They were doing Kanban, and there was some overall coordination, and things were rather smooth, but they could see the pressure coming already. Anyone of you recognizing this? It's a bit further up, further north in Europe. That's the Flattrud. It's the middle Sweden, Härjedal. And so this is like a big plateau, and there's a street like this. You'll see that's like here, here, and it goes like straight for a few kilometers. It's quite amazing. When you go to on this plateau on the left-hand side, you see the big mountains rising. The ones that also have snow in summer. And I think that was a bit their situation. They could have driven just as they were, but they knew that somehow this wouldn't take them to where they needed to be. Okay. So around that time, I heard about this KMM thing from Theodora and this KMM beta work group, and I got involved there. So I suggested to them, hey, there's this new thing, Kanban maturity model. Maybe, would it be okay if I pitched it to you? And they said, yeah, sure. And so I got a 1-hour appointment with the leadership team, and the leadership team consists of the DIT management folks, so 2 people, and the product side. So that's great. So they are now one leadership team. And I gave them a little presentation. You'll see a few of the slides that we used. And where is Steve? Steve was of great help to pull it together, like why, how, and what of KMM. Explain to them that's also to prevent overreaching. Showed them the model. Explain to them how an appraisal would work. And also explain which different outcomes they could expect at different levels in the KMM. And this resonated really well with them. I think what they liked, and they said they really liked the outcome orientation. So it's not a fluffy model, and then you can say, oh, we're level whatever now, but it really, and they really, they needed these outcomes here because they were already seeing that they had some issues there I needed to improve. And also it sounded pretty pragmatic and painless, so they said, yeah, let's do it. Okay, here are 2 people you have seen before, so thanks. Theodora, Steve, and also the KMM beta folks. It was a great help. And that was like half a year ago, and the materials weren't as gelled as they are today. So it was good to get help. Cool, so that's where we started. I did the initial appraisal, and I presented the results to the leadership team in January. And luckily, a few weeks later, they had this all-hands meeting where everyone was in one location. I could present the results also to the whole team, which was really cool. I think it's also a sign for really transparent culture. And I included some calls to action, and I got into some good discussions with people. So I guess you're all curious now where they are. So maybe just from what you heard, what level, you've seen a lot of the level. What do you think? Which level were they on at that time? The KMM.
1+.
1+? 3? You optimist. Okay, although it's a bit true. Oh. Okay, let's see. Let's get back to this. So, and there's like the 3 areas where we have a look at. It's the Kanban practices, it's the culture, and then the business orientation, right? Business outcomes. So let's start with the Kanban practices. Yeah, they were like really mixed, 2, 3, they had some practices up to level 4, but they were really like more heading towards level 2. This is maybe even a bit optimistic there. So they had some key issues like the dependency management was just not working, so they weren't actively managing their dependencies. And also they were treating all teams and all work the same, which it actually isn't. Okay, and also defects and blockers weren't properly managed. So overall, this is the picture. sorry, and you don't need to read the stuff, but that's the practices, the direction, and then the maturity levels here. And so here, that's level 3. So you see here 1 is all solid, and then 2, yeah, it's kind of, yeah, almost there. And then 3, it's getting much redder. Let's zoom in a bit here. So that's what I described. On the culture side, was quite interesting, and I used the cultural appraisal worksheet from Steve and have a look at the cultural values. And you'll see, on the right-hand side, you'll see a brief description of each of the values. So transparency was definitely a green. Everyone was really open. We had team boards. They reflected all the work that was going on. There was no hiding. Also, management had a really open culture. That's really cool. That's the ML1 transition thing. Then acts of leadership. Well, we had some really interesting discussions about this because they had initiated quite some changes and they supported the Agile coach to do this, but they never got through. It always just started and then got lost in all the all the operational madness in the day-to-day work. So they weren't really able to get a lot of changes installed, or leadership acts. Same for evolutionary change. I mean, they resisted things like big upfront whatever changes. So they had really an appreciation to let it grow. But at the same time, as I said, from the leadership perspective, they weren't really effective in supporting it yet. And lastly, collaboration. That's an interesting thing here. And I should maybe add that when we started with the assessment, we decided to do this on the workflow level, so on the overall level. So not in the teams, we could have done it in the teams and say, oh, they're also great and they're collaborating, but we knew that this is not the issue, right, that they're having. So we placed the assessment on the higher workflow level, which was epics in that case. So they were using epics that were the feature level, and then the teams, they were using tasks and stories. So this red little thingy here means collaboration across teams. Of course, they were collaborating nicely within the teams. And they also had some collaboration across teams, but it was more like by chance and really depending on the individuals. And so the first focus was within the teams. And I have to say that we really just noticed like this past months which kind of silos was grown there. The team silos, I think we went a bit too far to strengthen the teams. And we had stable teams for a long time and they were just, really, really tight. And we're still working to break this up and to move the focus to a higher level, this super tribe. Cool, level 2, you can imagine there's also a few reds coming up here. But basic understanding was pretty good, so they had a good understanding of their workflow already, like until delivery, so they didn't just develop, but they also had like a review period with their stakeholders and then putting the stuff live and so on. So that was pretty good. Of course, flow was not so good, overall flow, that's also, it's tightly linked with the collaboration piece. And respect. I called it a bit yellow because, of course, in that organization, they really respect people, as human beings. At the same time, so far, they never managed to, usually crazy deadlines were imposed on the project, and they were never able to push back. And, so the teams always had to deal with these deadlines, and, it's one death march after the next. And so I hope for the next release this is going to change, but this has been a real issue, and then people had to work longer or shift their vacations and so on. So that's why this respect is red there. Okay. So overall, we get to this picture. So we have Kanban practices. There you see, that's quite a range. And the culture is on a much lower level. So we're overreaching, actually, the culture with the Kanban practices, okay? So this resulted in difficulties, and, the coach and the coach team and I, we could feel it, and for me this was kind of an aha moment, also talking with Steve about this, like, okay, this explains a lot of the struggles we had, And also it was clear that it was limiting business outcomes. And I showed it to the management team, this picture, you know, maybe from one of David's presentations, and they said, yeah, they could feel it. Because the other issue or point they had is that, you know, we're still this kind of bubble in a large organization, and they're still having this, you know, they have other forces coming down from the top, like these silos, and I think the org overall is probably level 0 with a little bit of 1. So, and you know, they had this constant pressure also from the top, or you know, cultural differences, and you know, then the coaches, you know, working with our team and trying to pushing them further. So, and they could really feel all these cultural topics there. Okay, so here were the recommendations. So business purpose, I didn't share any details with you because there wasn't anything, which was also kind of a, you know, one of these things like the product owner teams, they knew like, oh yeah, we don't have a real business plan or, you know, objectives for the year, and the IT side didn't have either, but somehow they suspected the other might have something, the other party. So it was one of these things like, oh, okay, we don't have anything. And we're still working on that to define something now. That's quite an interesting journey, and you know, this is also where you get to level 3, you know, because it opens up totally different questions. If you have a look, like what's the business purpose and how can we say we're successful at the end of the year? Good. And in the middle, leadership. And we said, okay, out of these 5, we're going to focus on collaboration and flow first, because it seems to be the most immediate issues. And then I told him, you could use this to practice acts of leadership, right? Because acts of leadership really help you to install changes. And that's what I did later on. And then Kanban practice adoption, we say, okay, let's chill, you know, let's focus on level 2 first and really consolidate on level 2 before we push any further. So also a few guys there, you know, they've been to Kanban training and they're excited, you know, and sometimes I do this myself. It's like, oh, I love other stuff, but let's do this. And it's just too early, right? So you need to cover your bases first before you move on. So that's what we agreed to. Good. So what do you think happened next? So we had this meeting and agreed all these things. Just guess? Any guesses? What do you think happened?
Stagnation, but uncertainty how to be next.
Any other ideas? It's pretty, I wouldn't call it stagnation, and maybe this picture is a bit too strict with them, but you know, you need to have a cat picture in your presentation, right? So that's my cat. So, well, you know, not a lot happened. It wasn't really stagnation, but you know, let's say we were progressing at the usual, you know, tempo that you would expect in a large organization. So, you know, of course, we agreed things and we had scheduled some workshops and so on, but you know, it wasn't really going through the roof or anything. So we're getting closer to the middle of the story, and what happened, it was in April. We were actually pretty lucky from a change perspective because we got into a project crisis and we get a management intervention, and this was caused by this chart here. So have a look, what was going on? Why was there a little crisis? Can you see it? Huh?
Declining delivery rate.
Yeah, it's like, it's really bad. It was actually 3 weeks of 0 delivery. And that was one of the charts they used. It says delivery rate in epics per week. So what kind of measure is this? Throughput, yeah, and just output. So it's not outcome. As output, you know, it's always interesting if you have a look at the metrics companies use to see like what's also the maturity and the culture. So pure output focused. We're still working on that, but you know, it's baby steps. So yeah, this sent some strong signals. Also, the situation was already a bit tight because they had projected in the throughput three epics per week. And we were far behind this, and then suddenly there were 3 weeks with no epics delivered. Okay, and you could also see it nicely in the CFD that there's flat deadline, and also the WIP was increasing again. So it's been always at a pretty high level, but it was kind of growing again. So it sent some signals, some sirens going off, and as you can expect in such a situation, management offered their support, right? That's what you never want, right? So I don't speak about the leadership team in the project, but the levels above, which are already pretty high in the organization. So this project has quite some visibility. So they demanded tight operational management. You need to get the IT teams under control, right? So they would have liked us to do like installing project managers or team leads and all the team that assign work to people, right? In order to make sure they're working on the right things and actually completing stuff. Interestingly, at the same time, the throughput of the teams was really stable and rather high. I think in these 3 weeks, I think 70 or so user stories got produced. It's like, what happened? Where does all this power go, right? And I think that's a typical issue that you have when you move beyond level 1 and level 2. Because if I'm team focused, I can say, yeah, we're producing 30 user stories per week. Our teams are doing great. But that doesn't mean that you get any of the overarching features done. And this is what matters to the customers and to the stakeholders. So that was pretty bad. On the other hand, that's what I learned from Mr. Anderson. Never waste a good crisis. And so, it wasn't like existential or anything. Remember, we're still in this large organization, and, more has to happen for really the existential crisis. But it was enough to get people, moving and, make them more open, maybe, to finally do the changes we've been discussing for quite some time. So I had a look at the ADKAR model. It was also a tip from Steve before, that was after we did the initial appraisal, and it was clear that the managers, they were already, for most of the values, they were really level 3 there. So, they knew them and they kind of liked the ones, there was something said, yeah, we would like to be, have more collaboration across the team. So they were already bought in, and they also, I think they had some idea how to do this. So now it was just this Nike moment, right? Just do it. Which made things a lot easier. So, the step we had to make also with the leadership team wasn't that large. It was really get them into actually doing stuff differently. So, that was practicing acts of leadership. So we had this discussion like, how can we finish the epics quicker? And then, oh Christ, all the teams are blocking each other. It was really like a deadlock. I think we had 27 or so epics going on in parallel with an average of 10 user stories. So it's a huge amount of stuff just in flight, right? And teams were waiting on each other and not a lot was moving. So we need to get our WIP under control, The good thing is that it was immediately clear to them. I think I have like an echo here or something. Can you hear this? Switch this off maybe? Okay. So, we didn't need to educate them a lot, it was really just doing. That's still on?
The red light is on.
Push. Okay, better? Woo. Okay. Cool. So, we need to get our WIP under control. Okay. So, stepped up and they said, okay, we will implement tight policies, people, like from tomorrow on. It just took like 1 or 2 weeks to figure these out and to kind of agree them. And they say, and we will enforce, which is, I think, even more important, right? And they did, so that was really cool. So they totally nailed acts of leadership. And that's the changes that were agreed. So introducing cap tokens to as real pull signals from the team. And Steve, we have to check the model. I don't think it's explicitly in there as a technique, and it's just great. And we simulated this with a cross-team Okaloa team flow version.
What's CAP?
Yeah, it stands for capacity, and it basically means that you have like poker chips, like tokens. So each of the teams, they have 3 tokens, and they use each of the tokens if they start a story relating to an epic that they haven't started yet. So basically they can only work on stories relating to 3 epics in parallel, which is a huge limitation for them, because before this they were owning their own epics and they could just start, I think, 3 or 4 per team, plus they were contributing to other teams' epics. So overall they probably had like more like 7 or so epics in progress, all the teams, and it was way too much. And also you can use these cap tokens in the replenishment to see which teams do have capacity and which epics can we start in delivery. Question?
Yeah, just how does that differ from width? Like I'm not too sure what the difference between that and width.
You could like limit your whip on the feature level, like limit epics in progress, but usually you have some disbalance in the system, and that didn't help because you have different teams involved and sometimes more than 3 teams. Of course, we could have also said like reduce the whip limit maybe to 15 or so overall. It would help somewhat, but cap tokens are much different. So, yeah.
The cap tokens, this was implemented by the teams, not like product managers saying you get free. You guys created this yourselves to manage it?
No.
Ground up or bottom up?
It was actually both. So we discussed it with a few guys from the team, and we had run the simulation with a few guys, so they kind of knew how it worked. And then we just said, okay, this is how it goes. And so, and I'll show you this. So we completely switched to an electronic tool. Before this, they had both electronic and paper. Guess which tool it was? I wasn't happy. Jira. So, and I told them, okay, guys, this is not the most happy thing to do, but we need to move to Jira because we were 3 locations and we had this half-maintained board on one wall, and then the half-maintained Jira, and it was just not taking us anywhere. So totally switched to Jira, and by now we have Tableau on top, just like a brand, which is really, really cool. So one of the guys, he's really Tableau nerd, and now we even have cap tokens implemented electronically with Tableau on top of Jira. Right?
That was going to be my question. How did you implement cap tokens?
There's just no chance with Jira, so I'm sorry. Well, you can go there and count the stories, and so yeah, okay. And we did workflow level Kanban meetings 3 times a week. They kind of had them before, but only on the main location, and the other was like, more like satellites. So we said like, okay, we're going to have this joint Kanban meeting, and from every team, 1 representative needs to be there all the time, plus the product owners. Because we combined this with replenishment, you see that's a really strict policies, but it also something for me, it's like, okay, let's acknowledge, that's the level we're at, and this is the right thing to do, really, really strict basic policies, and make people adhere to it, and then see what happens next, okay? And so these meetings were the only point where new epics were allowed to get started, because they had a look at the Kanban tokens also, or the cap tokens, sorry. And then it just happened last week that the Kanban meeting was taking place, and we had a look at this Tableau thing, and 1 team was red, they were +1. And then like 3 people asked, what's going on, guys? Why do we do this? And they were kind of, they really had to explain themselves. So it's really good that people pay a lot of attention to this now. And also they defined top 5 epics just to get out of the traffic jam. They said, okay, you will do all that's needed to finish these top 5 epics to get into flow again. And I think the week after, the next 2 weeks, I think they got 4 or 5 done. So, and then it was kind of flowing again. Okay. So this was implemented rather quickly. I think it just took 1 or 2 weeks, which is kind of speed of light in a large organization. It was really good.
How large was it? 1,000? Is that right? Or was that
No, the teams involved are maybe it's 70. I mean,
7-0.
yeah, 70. Yeah.
I thought you said 7. Thank you.
No. So 70 people. It's quite a lot. So yeah, and then they got rolling, and then a lot of interesting things happened, and I said like, oh, okay, you can really, that's like Kanban from the book. Because like after maybe 1 or 2 weeks later, it was on a Friday afternoon at 3 or 4 p.m., one of the teams, they said, oh, Susanne, oh my God, we're starving. We don't have any work. On Monday at 9 a.m., we will not have any work left. I mean, of course they did, On Monday I went to their board and said, okay, show me your board. It was still full. It's like, yeah, but this bucket's almost done and this is almost done. I said, yeah. I believe that you are starving when I see an empty board, right? So that's also, I think you'll see this all the time. People are really afraid to not have any work, right? So, but they were starving. I mean, maybe a bit later than they expected, but it was situation, and their product owner was on vacation, and that's why they found me. And I was like, when I heard this, what do you think was my reaction? Yeah! Yoo-hoo! Finally! It was really good. Why do you think I was so happy at this point? What happened? Or did we get?
Decreasing what?
Yeah, also we actually got this done. What else? Yeah.
They were pulling the work.
Hmm?
They were pulling work, they were pulling the retrospect.
Yeah, there was like real pull signals, exactly. Yeah. And we could finally see the disbalances because, we'd known all the time, there's something weird here, and, we knew that it can't be like all the teams have the same amount of work because, these business verticals and the different releases, of course, they had different emphasis on different parts of the process. But the problem was with such a high level of WIP, you don't see it. You don't see your bottleneck, and you don't find the teams that have slack time. And so this is really, this is sort of like magic. So yeah, and that was really the turning point because we get similar signals from like a handful of the other teams later on. And this forced the product owner team and all of us into demand shaping. Maybe I should explain the term. So demand shaping means that you tightly control what you let into the system. And we use the capacity tokens for this, the cap tokens. And it, there were tokens available for some of the teams, but no features, that were already committed for the next release that could be done by these teams. So we really, really had a liquidity issue because the teams were tightly vetted to the business verticals. And normally no other team was allowed to touch the verticals, and which is from a Kanban point of view or flow perspective really not good. You don't have a lot of liquidity in your market, right? You have epics that need to be implemented by teams, and you only have really limited choices. So all of the measures, they didn't create new issues. The issues had been there all the time. All they did was surface all the stuff that was going on, and that was really healthy. So at this point, we really became aware how bad the dependency really were and liquidity issues. And also, that had been a problem in the project since the beginning, this upstream starvation. So product owner team had always struggled to have the right options available for delivery, the right format. And it now became brutally clear that this was the case. So we need to increase liquidity in the system. And what we did is finally have shared code ownership, doing baby steps there, but allowing other teams to touch another team's vertical. So, and there were a lot of, oh my God, they will refactor our whole vertical and they're doing it very differently. That, we know, let's define some rules and just try it out. You need to try it out, and we need to stop whining and just saying, oh, this could happen. We need to see what will happen. And actually it's going quite smoothly now. So through to these cap tokens, we see like, okay, we would need this other team, but they're totally full, no way. So, and then they ask like, oh, okay, maybe this team that has capacity, maybe they could take over the few stories of the other team and just maybe do the epic themselves. It's really cool. And we also just said like, okay, we need better metrics. We can't do this on Jira. It's just not possible. So that's where Tableau came in. It was also interesting that the management team said, yeah, we totally understand now, Jira is a level 1 tool. If you want to move beyond, like in this scaled environment, it's just the wrong tool. So they currently look into Swift Kanban and Kanbanize to see what they can. Okay, cool. So the end of the story, and I need to hurry up a little bit here. Yeah, thanks. So current state, where are we today? Dust is settling down. It took like 2 months to really stabilize on maturity level 2, and I would think that's a pretty typical thing, like maybe half a year for like one step forward. Delivery is running quite smoothly now, but we have revealed all the upstream issues, so we'll see. We're still waiting for confirmation from the lead time data, which is lagging, but we're coming from an average of 130 or so days lead time for the epics, so the first fresh and short ones should come in now. Okay. So what really happened, you saw this before from David. So we started here on the plateau, happy, and then, there was a lot of turmoil going on here, like this. We are starving, created a lot of stress with the product owner teams, and I went to say, okay, people relax, this is normal, we'll get through this, but hang on it, right? And I think we're getting closer to the next happy state. And you'll see in a second that they're moving ahead to level 3 now, which is really cool. Okay, so that was January. And watch closely, that's June now. So a lot of the red is gone here. So the only thing that's still red is blocker analysis. It's always to do with Jira. Of course, we visualize blockers, but at the moment we couldn't get the data out of the system. It's just a nightmare. So that's the only thing to be done. And finally, we have quite a few of these in place already. So we're really moving into level 3 now. Culturally, also a lot of change, as you could guess from the story. So really active leadership, really, really good. Collaboration with flow improving. I colored it a little bit yellow because we still need to stabilize. So, we need to make sure that we cover our bases there. So that's what next. The leadership, they said, okay, we're really operating like project managers again, and we want to step out of this role because that's not how we see ourselves as leaders. So that's the work for the upcoming weeks, to work with the teams to take on responsibility and ownership. So this is the breaking the team silo thing. It's going to be interesting. Really working with the product team, helping them, to get the upstream under control, and propagating pull signals upstream. So I hope we can try this out in Meyerhofen to see how can we use the CAP tokens upstream to use these pull signals to get, we need a smooth end-to-end flow, otherwise it will always be stressful for everyone involved. Getting a suitable Kanban tool, yeah. And and we already get pulled to address maturity level 3 issues. So particularly business metrics, KPIs. We had a really great brainstorming session, like what difference does the system make to our customers if it's operating nicely? And said, we could measure transaction time. How long does it take for certain parts of the process, and how many exceptions do we have? How often do admins to help them and stuff like this? So that's the thing we're moving next. It's really cool. So that's the end of this story. And I just have 3 slides or so KMM functions, okay? So how did the KMM help us, in which way? So I think for once, KMM is a sense-making model. That there are different models, and a few of them just help you making sense of what's going on, and that is really, really helpful. Like this, I had this significant aha moment when I saw this, oh crap, culture here, practice here, we need to, focus on the culture first, and what was going on. It's really good. And of course, then also as a coaching tool. So, you could do change like that. But with the KMM, it helps you to kind of align this along a path, you have a direction. And also, I think it's really cool because, evolutionary change is not always well received, it's kind of, it feels open-ended and so on, and you could say like, okay, we're moving into that direction, and we want to be there and there at this point in time, which was really good. And also, particularly, you remember when you're in this unhappy state, it's good to have something that says, okay, you're on the right track and things will get better if you hang in, So that was what the KMM was doing for me and for the leadership team, We're on the right track. Even if it sometimes feels like that, like being on a roller coaster, but still it's like, okay, you know, it'll smooth down and things will be nice again. Okay, cool. With that, thanks a lot for being here. It's a pleasure. And happy to take on any questions. We have 2 minutes. Right?
So can I clarify one more time?
Yeah.
Is it 70 people at the company, 70 teams?
Oh, no. 70 people and 8 teams.
8 teams?
Yeah.
And was that just the product development, or was that the entire company?
No, the entire company is like thousands of. It's a
Okay.
really large company. Yeah, okay. Steve?
More of a comment, but the question is, do they see it this way? You mentioned the senior leadership, when there was a big crisis of no delivery, they said, we need operational control. And then you had this list of things that you did. So some more adherence to rules like river limits, capacity limits with the cap tokens, and there was a couple other things specifically to slide 39. But to me, that's the definition of operational control.
Yep.
Not telling people what to do. That's a task level management, or if anything, line level control. But an operational control is what's the policy that shapes how everybody acts. So I think, in my opinion, it seems like what you did is teach them how to manage operations. They have the wrong idea about how to manage operations. Is this the kind of thing that they're open to hearing? Like, you guys need to learn how to do operational level management?
I think they were aware. They said, okay, let's do it our way and let's do it the Kanban way, you know, and so I think so, yes. So we didn't need to educate the direct leadership team in the project, but the people outside, and you know, and things have calmed down. So they got the impression that things are under control now, and then you know, okay, we don't get any support at the moment, which is good. Okay.
Yeah, and to me, like, support means what are the policies?
Yeah, or you know,
Not telling people what to do.
yeah. Okay, but it's, you know, it's a bit like with tongue in cheek, you know, it's like, oh yeah, no, like get a proper project manager and tell these people what they have to do. It's like, oh, okay, really, you want to do this with 8 teams? Good luck, right? So, yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. See you later.